My name is Hiro, and the most important thing you need to understand about me is that I was not chosen by a dragon, blessed by a goddess, reincarnated as a sword, or born with demon eyes that can see the future. I was just a very normal guy with a very abnormal problem. Every morning, I gained exactly 1 extra second of complete invisibility. It started on a Tuesday, which was already suspicious because nothing good ever happened to me on Tuesdays. I woke up late, rolled out of bed, stepped on a charging cable, almost died because my ankle forgot how bones worked, and stumbled into the bathroom. I was brushing my teeth when I blinked and suddenly the mirror was empty. Not blurry, not transparent. Empty. The toothbrush was floating in front of the sink by itself. I froze. Then 1 second later, I popped back into existence with toothpaste foam all over my mouth. I stared at my reflection for 10 full minutes. Naturally, I came to the only reasonable conclusion. I had become a ghost. I spent the next hour testing whether I could walk through walls. I could not. I learned this by hitting my forehead on my bedroom door, my kitchen wall, my closet, and one decorative pillar in the apartment lobby that I still believe should not have been there. So I moved to theory number 2. I was a vampire. Then I remembered I was standing in direct sunlight eating garlic chips. Theory number 3 was that I had unlocked a mysterious superpower. That theory was somehow the stupidest one, so of course it turned out to be correct. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror at exactly the same time, because if you randomly vanish once, you become the kind of person who schedules mirror appointments. I concentrated. Nothing happened. I clenched my fists. Nothing happened. I whispered, "Disappear." Nothing. Then I sneezed. My entire body vanished for 2 seconds. I came back holding the sink like I had just survived a natural disaster. 2 seconds. The first day had been 1 second. The second day was 2. On the third morning, I had 3. That was when I realized the rule. Every morning, my daily invisibility limit increased by exactly 1 second. I should explain what I mean by limit. I could activate the power whenever I wanted, but the total time I stayed invisible in one day could not exceed that day's allowance. On day 3, I could vanish once for 3 seconds, 3 times for 1 second, or use something messy like 1.7 seconds and then spend the rest of the afternoon trying to remember whether I still had 1.3 left. I learned very quickly that decimals were the true enemy of superheroes. Also, my clothes vanished with me. Thank goodness. That discovery saved this story from becoming extremely different. At first, the power was almost useless. 1 second of invisibility could not help me escape a villain, rob a fortress, infiltrate a secret base, or even cross a street before the light changed. But 1 second was perfect for something much more important: being annoying. On day 4, I waited until my coworker Daichi reached for the last dumpling at lunch. The exact instant his chopsticks touched it, I vanished, stole the dumpling, and reappeared behind him chewing. Daichi stared at the empty plate. He looked at me. He looked at the empty plate again. I nodded slowly as if I also feared the supernatural. For the rest of lunch, he kept whispering that the dumpling had been claimed by a spirit. I had never felt more powerful. On day 6, I stood beside a vending machine and used half-second bursts to make a soda can seem like it was sliding across the ground by itself. A high school student screamed and ran. I felt bad for exactly 3 seconds, which was also exactly how much invisibility I had left. On day 9, I made my neighbor believe her cat could teleport. This was not intentional. I vanished because I was trying to scare the cat. The cat was trying to scare me. We both jumped at the same time. I dropped a bag of fish snacks. The cat grabbed the bag and sprinted into the hallway. I reappeared right as my neighbor opened her door and saw her cat somehow dragging an unopened bag that, from her perspective, had just materialized from the air. She stared at the cat. The cat stared at me. I stared at the wall. Nobody said anything. The cat and I had an agreement after that. By day 14, I had developed rules. Rule 1. Never use invisibility while carrying hot soup. Rule 2. Never activate it while someone is looking directly at you, unless you want them to rethink everything they know about reality. Rule 3. Pigeons do not care if you are invisible. I discovered Rule 3 in the most painful possible way. I was eating bread in the park and decided it would be funny to vanish while surrounded by pigeons. In my imagination, they would panic because their bread god had disappeared. In reality, they simply continued attacking the location where my body still existed. Apparently, pigeons do not need vision to sense weakness. For 14 invisible seconds, I was beaten by birds nobody else could see hitting anything. A little boy nearby pointed at the moving cloud of pigeons and shouted that they were fighting a demon. His mother picked him up and left immediately. I used to think 14 seconds was a long time, and the days kept passing. 20 seconds became 30. 30 became 40. 40 became 1 minute, and the power started changing my life in ways I did not expect. Not important ways. Useful ways. For example, I never had to wait for an elevator again. The building where I worked had 6 elevators, and somehow all 6 of them were always on another floor. One morning, I arrived late and saw the doors closing 20 meters away. Normally, I would run, wave, fail, and spend the next 3 minutes pretending I was not angry. Instead, I vanished, sprinted, slid between the doors at the last second, and became visible in the corner. There were 9 people inside. All 9 saw the doors close with nobody entering, then saw me appear 2 seconds later. That was when I learned another rule. Teleportation is apparently more frightening than invisibility. Nobody spoke for the entire ride. One woman got off 3 floors early. After that, I practiced reappearing naturally. This was harder than it sounds. If you disappear behind a wall and reappear somewhere else, nobody questions it. If you disappear in an open hallway and reappear 10 meters away while holding coffee, people start believing the office is haunted. So I developed what I called the casual materialization technique. I would reappear while pretending to look at my phone, because modern society accepts almost any impossible event if the person involved is checking a notification. It worked frighteningly well. At 65 seconds, I tried my first serious use. I had gone to a giant convention center for a limited edition anime figure. It was a warrior princess wearing armor so detailed that the manufacturer had apparently spent more money sculpting one boot than I had in my bank account. The line wrapped around the building 3 times. I arrived at 6 in the morning. I was number 812. The store had 400 figures. This was war. I told myself using invisibility to skip a line was morally questionable. Then I remembered the figure came with an exclusive tiny plastic sword. My morals disappeared before I did. I vanished for 40 seconds and moved through the crowd. At first, I thought this would be easy. It was not. Being invisible does not make you intangible. People still bump into you. Bags still hit you. Children still somehow run directly into your knees with supernatural accuracy. I had to weave sideways between hundreds of people while holding my breath every time someone stopped suddenly. At one point, a cosplayer dressed as a 7-foot armored knight stepped backward and planted a giant foam boot directly on my shoe. I could not yell because an invisible scream creates questions, so I suffered in silence while the knight apologized to empty air. Then someone dropped a poster tube. I kicked it. It rolled across the floor by itself. 10 people screamed. A security guard chased it. I kept moving. By the time I reached the front, I had 17 seconds left. I ducked behind a merchandise banner, reappeared, and calmly joined the line between 2 confused college students who both assumed I had always been there. I got the figure. The tiny sword was absolutely worth becoming a criminal in spirit. That should have been the point where I became responsible. Instead, power made me ambitious. Not evil ambitious, convenience ambitious. I started keeping a notebook. Day 72, 72 seconds. Day 90, 1 minute 30 seconds. Day 100, 1 minute 40 seconds. I calculated that after 1 year, I would have 6 minutes and 5 seconds. After 5 years, I would have more than 30 minutes. After 10 years, over an hour. That was when I stopped chewing my breakfast. If the rule never changed, then eventually I could vanish for hours. One day, maybe most of a day. I stared at my cereal and realized I had accidentally become a long-term supernatural investment account. My power had compound interest, except the interest was me disappearing. I immediately created a spreadsheet. Then I deleted the spreadsheet because seeing the numbers made me feel like a villain planning retirement. Around day 120, something else happened. I discovered the power was smarter than I thought. I had been carrying a backpack when I vanished, and the backpack vanished too. Fine. I already knew clothes and things I was holding came with me. But then I dropped the backpack while invisible. The instant it left my hand, it became visible. The bag appeared in midair and fell onto the floor. I picked it back up. It vanished again. I spent the next 3 days testing this. A pencil vanished while I held it, and appeared when I released it. A sandwich vanished while I held it and appeared when I threw it. A chair did not vanish when I grabbed it with one hand. A small stool did. This raised an obvious question. How much could I take with me? Naturally, instead of doing careful scientific measurements, I went to a furniture store. I started with a lamp. Gone. A small table. Gone. A beanbag chair. Gone. Somehow. Then I hugged a display sofa. For one beautiful half-second, the sofa flickered out of existence. Unfortunately, a customer was sitting on it. The customer did not vanish. He screamed because the furniture under him disappeared, dropped 15 centimeters, and landed on the floor right when the sofa reappeared. I ran. That was the end of the furniture experiment. For now. By day 150, I could vanish for 2.5 minutes. And this was the point where I became dangerous to buffets. There was an all-you-can-eat barbecue place near my apartment that had one rule: no taking food home. I respected this rule for years. Then they introduced premium garlic beef with a 2-piece per person limit. 2 pieces. Who creates a buffet and then tells a grown man he can have 2 pieces of anything? That is not a buffet. That is emotional warfare. So I developed Operation Invisible Lunchbox. I brought a clean container inside my jacket. I waited for the beef tray to arrive. I activated invisibility, grabbed 4 pieces, put them in the container, and returned to my seat before reappearing. It was perfect. Except the kitchen staff saw 4 pieces of beef rise into the air and disappear. The chef dropped his tongs. A waiter crossed himself. A customer started recording. Then another tray came out. I should have stopped. I did not. The second time, I used a plate. From everyone else's point of view, a plate lifted itself from the counter and sailed across the restaurant carrying meat. People ducked. Someone yelled that the buffet was cursed. The automatic door opened because the plate passed near the sensor. 2 customers ran outside. I sat at my table trying not to laugh while chewing invisible garlic beef. Then my phone rang. A floating ringtone began moving through the restaurant. I panicked, turned visible instantly, and appeared behind a decorative plant holding a plate of meat I was not supposed to have. The manager looked at me. I looked at him. He looked at the plant. I slowly placed the plate on a nearby table and asked if the restroom was this way. He banned me for life. I still say the premium beef was worth it. My biggest mistake during those early months was assuming nobody would notice the weird patterns. People notice everything when they have security cameras. At first, the footage only showed tiny glitches. A door opening by itself. A snack moving. A chair rolling 3 centimeters. A shopping bag vanishing for 1 second and then appearing again. Nothing that looked like a person. But by the time I could stay invisible for 3 or 4 minutes, the footage became stranger. One afternoon, I visited a giant electronics store because I wanted to see a new gaming monitor they had on display. The monitor was behind a locked glass case, not because anyone wanted to steal it, but because apparently humans cannot be trusted around screens wider than their own bodies. I asked an employee if he could open the case. He said he would find the key. He disappeared for 20 minutes. I decided I would find the key faster. I turned invisible and slipped behind the staff door when another employee walked through. This was my first restricted area. I expected laser grids, secret files, maybe an underground tunnel. Instead, I found 6 boxes of printer paper, a microwave with a sign saying "Do not microwave fish," and a manager eating cake directly from the box with a plastic fork. The manager looked around nervously after every bite. I realized I had discovered a greater secret than any corporate document. It kept moving. There was a key cabinet near the back office. I found the glass case key, grabbed it, and headed out. Then someone opened the staff door toward me. I sidestepped. A rolling cart blocked my path. I climbed onto the cart. The employee pushed it through the doorway. So now I was invisible, standing on a moving cart, trying not to laugh while being transported through the store like cursed cargo. The employee stopped in the middle of the television section. I stepped off. The cart became lighter. He noticed. He looked under it. I walked away. Then I realized I was still holding the key. A visible key floating through an electronics store is not subtle. 3 customers saw it. One began filming. I grabbed the key tighter. It vanished. The customer lowered his phone and stared at the empty aisle. I unlocked the glass case, put the key in my pocket, and reappeared next to the monitor. 5 minutes later, the original employee finally returned and told me he could not find the key. I nodded sympathetically. That night, Someone uploaded the security footage. The clip showed the staff door opening, nobody entering, a cart moving strangely, then several minutes later the glass case unlocking by itself. The title was something like Haunted Electronics Store Catches Ghosts Stealing Nothing. The video got 12,000 views. I watched it 3 times. My first reaction was fear. My second reaction was pride. The camera angle made me look extremely mysterious, even though the mysterious ghost had actually spent 30 seconds trapped behind stacked printer paper because I sneezed and had to stop myself from reappearing. That was the beginning of the rumors. Different stores, different buildings, different camera systems. Doors moved by themselves. Objects floated. Elevators traveled with no visible passengers. Automatic sinks activated in empty bathrooms. The internet gave the phenomenon a name. The missing man. I hated it. It sounded too cool. I was not a missing man. I was Hiro. A guy who once used invisibility to steal his own package back from the wrong apartment because he was too embarrassed to knock twice. But the legend kept growing. And then it became useful. Around day 200, I found myself in the worst possible place at the worst possible time. A department store was running a midnight sale on a limited edition gaming chair shaped like a giant black dragon throne. Did I need it? No. Did I already own a chair? Yes. Did my current chair have plastic horns and glowing eyes? No. So obviously I went. The sale started at midnight. Hundreds of people waited behind barriers. When the doors opened, society collapsed immediately. People sprinted. Shopping carts became weapons. One man vaulted over a stack of baskets like he had trained his entire life for this moment. I saw a grandmother drift around a corner using a cart like a professional racer. I knew I was outmatched, so I vanished. At that point, my daily limit was over 3 minutes. I moved between the stampeding customers, slipping through gaps, climbing over abandoned carts, and dodging elbows. Being invisible in a crowd felt completely different now. I had enough time to stop, think, change direction, and wait for openings. Nobody could track me. Nobody could block me on purpose. For the first time, I understood what the power could become. Then someone grabbed the dragon chair at the same time as me. The chair disappeared because I was touching it. The man holding the other side did not. He looked down. His hands were gripping empty air. He screamed. I froze. He screamed louder. People turned. I tried to walk away while still holding the chair. So from everyone's perspective, the man was being dragged across the floor by an invisible dragon throne. His shoes squeaked. He refused to let go. I refused to let go. We crossed an entire aisle in silent combat. Then I changed tactics. I let go. The giant chair reappeared instantly. The man fell backward into a mountain of cushions. Everyone gasped. I grabbed the chair again. It vanished. Now the crowd really lost their minds. I escaped with the chair, reappeared near checkout, and tried to buy it normally. The cashier stared at me, then at the security footage playing on a monitor above her. On the screen, a giant dragon throne was blinking in and out of reality as people screamed around it. She asked if I knew anything about what happened. I said no. The chair's glowing red eyes turned on by themselves. I did not know the display model had batteries. The cashier stopped asking questions. That chair is still in my apartment. I call it evidence. By month 8, the power had entered the 5-minute range. 5 minutes does not sound like much until you try to do things while nobody can see you. 5 minutes is enough to cross a hotel lobby, ride an elevator, enter a conference room, eat 3 tiny sandwiches, realize the sandwiches belong to a private meeting, panic, and leave before anyone knows the sandwich thief existed. 5 minutes is enough to escape a bad date. I know because I did it. The date was not dangerous. She was actually very nice. The problem was that I lied and said I enjoyed hiking. She pulled out a map. A physical map. She had highlighted 14 mountain routes. I knew immediately that I was dealing with a professional. When she went to the restroom, I considered leaving normally. But then I imagined having to explain why I suddenly remembered an emergency. So I did the mature thing. I vanished. I walked outside. I made it 3 blocks. Then I remembered I had left my jacket on the chair. I went back invisible, grabbed the jacket, and accidentally knocked over my water. She returned at that exact moment. From her perspective, the guy she was dating had disappeared, but his jacket floated off the chair and ran away. She later posted about it online. The missing man legend gained another chapter. I deleted the dating app, but 5 minutes also saved me from situations that were actually dangerous. One evening, I was walking home carrying convenience store noodles when two guys started arguing outside a parking garage. One shoved the other. A metal sign fell. Someone yelled. More people joined. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew one thing. My noodles were getting cold. So I vanished. I walked straight through the chaos, not through people. Again, invisibility is not intangibility. I zigzagged around them, stepped over a dropped bag, ducked under someone's wild arm, and continued toward home. Then one of the men stumbled backward into me. He hit an invisible human-shaped wall and bounced forward. He turned around. There was nobody there. He reached out. I moved. He reached again. I moved again. For the next 10 seconds, this furious man chased what he thought was a ghost while everyone else watched. Then I made a terrible decision. I tapped him on the shoulder from behind. He spun around. Nothing. The entire argument ended immediately. Everybody left. I accidentally solved a fight by convincing 6 adults that a spirit had arrived to supervise them. I went home and ate my noodles. That was the night I realized invisibility was not just about hiding. It was about controlling what other people thought was happening. That idea changed everything. I started experimenting with misdirection. I would open one door while walking through another. I would toss a coin to make someone look left while I moved right. I learned how to use automatic doors, reflective surfaces, escalators, moving crowds, and noise. I became weirdly good at moving through places without being touched. Not because I was a trained spy, because I had been hit by enough shopping bags to adapt. I also learned to control my breathing. I learned which shoes squeaked. I learned that some motion sensors can detect invisible people because they do not care about light. I learned that thermal cameras are rude. The thermal camera discovery happened in a museum. I did not break in. I paid for a ticket. But there was an exhibit under renovation. And through a half-open door I saw what looked like a gigantic golden statue shaped like a fish wearing a crown. There was no sign explaining it. I needed answers. So I vanished and slipped past the barrier. The room was dark. The statue was enormous. The crowned fish looked like it had judged civilizations and found them disappointing. I walked closer. Then a security guard in another room saw a bright human-shaped heat signature moving across his monitor. I did not know that yet. What I knew was that an alarm suddenly chirped and footsteps approached. I hid behind the golden fish. Then I remembered I was invisible, and hiding was technically unnecessary. Then I remembered thermal cameras existed, and hiding was suddenly very necessary. The guard entered with a handheld device. I moved around the statue as he moved around the statue. He went left. I went right. He went right. I went left. For 30 seconds, we performed the world's most stressful dance around a royal fish. Then my phone vibrated. The guard stopped. I stopped. The phone vibrated again. The guard stared directly at my pocket. I did the only thing I could think of. I placed the phone on the fish statue and walked away. The phone became visible the instant I released it. The guard watched a smartphone materialize on the golden fish's head. He whispered something I could not hear. And he ran out of the room. I retrieved the phone, escaped, and spent the rest of the museum visit pretending to be deeply interested in pottery. The museum later released a statement saying there had been a technical malfunction. The missing man forums did not believe them. Yes, there were forums now. People collected videos. They drew maps. They compared timestamps. Some claimed I was a government experiment. Some claimed I was an alien. One extremely confident man insisted I was a time traveler from a future where humans had evolved beyond clothes. I took personal offense at that one. I was wearing clothes. They were just also invisible. By day 300, I had more than 5 minutes per day, and I had started saving it like money. I stopped wasting all of it on pranks. Not because I became mature, because I became strategic. A 5-second prank cost 5 seconds. 5 seconds could also be the difference between escaping a crowded train and being caught between two businessmen arguing about whose umbrella was whose. So I developed a budget. 10 seconds for emergencies. 30 seconds for transportation nonsense. 1 minute for opportunities. Everything else had to justify itself. This budget lasted exactly 2 days. On the 3rd day, Daichi left his birthday cake unattended. I spent 4 minutes making slices disappear one at a time. He blamed the intern. I eventually confessed, not to Daichi, to the intern. I bought him lunch. Then came the day everything escalated. I was leaving work when I noticed a crowd gathered outside the building across the street. People were pointing upward. On the roof, a giant advertising balloon shaped like a smiling octopus had broken loose from one anchor cable. It was swinging over the street like a tentacled moon. Workers were trying to secure it, but every gust of wind dragged it farther. I did not care at first. Then I saw something hanging from one of the loose ropes. A delivery drone. The drone had somehow tangled itself in the cable and was still trying to fly. The result was an octopus balloon being pulled sideways by a furious machine carrying somebody's dinner. This was the kind of problem my life attracted now. A worker climbed toward the cable. The balloon jerked. The worker slipped and grabbed the railing. Everyone screamed. I had about 4 minutes of invisibility left. I looked at the building entrance. Security guards blocked it. I looked at the exterior fire stairs. Locked gate. I looked at the octopus. It smiled down at me. I took that personally. I vanished. I crossed the street, slipped through the crowd, followed an employee through the building entrance, ran up 3 flights, realized there were 12 more floors, took the elevator, got off on the wrong level, ran back, found the roof access, and emerged into hurricane-level stupidity. The worker was still hanging on. The rope was snapping fiber by fiber. Nobody could see me. That was useful. Except I needed to help a man without convincing him he was being rescued by a demon. I grabbed the back of his safety harness. He felt an invisible force pulling him upward. He screamed harder. I pulled anyway. Another worker grabbed his arms. Together we dragged him onto the roof. He stared at the empty space where I was standing. Then the octopus balloon broke free. The drone was still tangled underneath it. The giant smiling inflatable creature sailed over downtown with a drone hanging from one tentacle and a bag of fried chicken swinging below it. Everybody on the roof watched in silence. I used the moment to leave. The balloon traveled 6 kilometers before landing on a soccer field. The fried chicken was never recovered. The rescue footage went viral. Security cameras showed the roof door opening by itself, then the hanging worker suddenly being pulled upward by nothing. The missing man legend exploded. For the first time, people were not just laughing at the videos. They were asking whether the invisible person was trying to help. That made me uncomfortable. I preferred being considered a buffet ghost. Heroes have expectations. Buffet ghosts just steal beef. But the internet had decided I was some kind of urban guardian. And unfortunately, the internet was about to give me ideas. The internet's idea was simple. If the missing man was real, people wanted to test him. This resulted in the strangest month of my life. A ramen shop put a free bowl on an empty table with a handwritten sign saying, "For our invisible friend." I ignored it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I went inside, turned invisible, ate the entire bowl, washed the bowl, returned it to the table, and left a coin beside it. I thought this was hilarious. The shop had 12 cameras. The video showed steaming noodles lifting into the air and disappearing bite by bite while chopsticks floated around the bowl. I had forgotten that objects became visible when they were not touching me, so the chopsticks kept blinking in and out every time I adjusted my grip. The owner posted the footage. The ramen shop became famous. For 1 week, there was a 3-hour line. The owner added a second empty table. I did not use it because I am not greedy. Also, the line was too long. Then a bakery left a cream bun in its window overnight. A gym left a protein shake. A bookstore left a mystery novel open to a page where someone had circled the sentence, "We know you are here." I closed the book and rotated it upside down. The next morning, the bookstore owner almost fainted. People began leaving offerings to me like I was an extremely lazy city spirit. One convenience store put out a basket containing potato chips, batteries, 2 bananas, and a coupon for windshield cleaning. I took the chips. I still do not know what they expected me to do with the windshield coupon. The legend became so popular that businesses started advertising missing man discounts. This was offensive because I never received any of them while visible. I considered walking into a store and announcing that I was the missing man, but I imagined the conversation and immediately abandoned the idea. The problem with having a secret identity is that telling people ruins the only interesting part. Then somebody announced a reward. A private security company offered 1 million yen to anyone who could prove the missing man existed and explain how he was entering restricted spaces. The company's president was a man named Kuroda. I knew his name because his face was suddenly everywhere. Kuroda was the kind of person who wore a suit so perfectly pressed that I suspected he ironed himself while still inside it. He had silver glasses, sharp hair, and the expression of a man who had personally defeated fun in a duel. He gave interviews saying every strange video had a rational explanation. Faulty cameras, hidden strings, clever editing, employee pranks. I agreed with him publicly by doing absolutely nothing. Privately, I was insulted, not because he did not believe in me, because he called my floating ramen trick simple. Simple? I had burned my tongue twice during that operation. So when Kuroda announced a public demonstration of his company's new high-security exhibition room, I paid attention. The room was installed inside a shopping mall. Its purpose was to display valuable items protected by what Kuroda called a layered detection system. Pressure sensors in the floor, motion sensors, thermal imaging, magnetic door locks, laser beams, audio monitors. Inside the room, on a pedestal, he placed one object, a plastic toy duck. The duck was worth maybe 500 yen. Kuroda challenged the missing man to enter the room and move it. The internet went insane. I told myself I would not do it. This was obviously a trap. The duck did not matter. My secret did. I went to work. I ate lunch. I came home. I watched the live stream replay. Kuroda stood beside the glass security room with that calm little smile. The duck wore a tiny red bow tie. That was unnecessary. At 11:40 that night, I was standing inside the shopping mall. I never said I had self-control. The exhibition stayed open 24 hours for 1 week. Visitors could walk around the glass room but not enter. Cameras streamed everything online. I had 6 minutes and several seconds available that day. I spent an hour studying the room from outside. The pressure floor was a problem. The thermal camera was a problem. The lasers were a problem. The locked door was a problem. The toy duck was mocking me. Then I noticed the cleaning crew. Every 2 hours, a robot floor cleaner entered the surrounding area. It was a wide, flat machine about the size of a suitcase. It did not enter the secure room, but it carried cleaning supplies. I watched it once, then twice. On the third pass, I had a plan so stupid that it became genius by accident. I vanished and placed one foot on top of the cleaning robot. The robot kept moving. I placed the other foot on it and crouched. Now I was riding an autonomous floor cleaner while invisible. This did not help me enter the room. It did help me feel powerful. I rode it past the cameras 3 times because I'd already spent the invisibility and I wanted value for money. Then I reached the actual plan. The room's pressure sensors covered the floor. The walls were glass. The ceiling was not. Above the exhibition was a decorative lighting rig connected to the mall ceiling. The next afternoon, I returned wearing work gloves and carrying a coil of thin rope inside my backpack. I waited until the mall became crowded. Then I vanished, slipped through an employee service door, climbed maintenance stairs, and reached the space above the exhibit. This was where I learned that ceiling spaces are designed for spiders, cables, and people much thinner than me. I crawled across metal supports while trying not to sneeze from dust. Below me, hundreds of people watched the duck live stream on their phones while standing 20 meters from the actual duck. Human civilization had peaked. I reached the area above the room and found a ventilation panel. Too small. A cable opening. Too small. A maintenance hatch. Locked. I had used almost 4 minutes already. Then I saw a sprinkler pipe running through a gap beside the wall. The gap was maybe 30 centimeters wide. I am not 30 centimeters wide, but the glass wall stopped short of the structural ceiling by a narrow service channel. I could not fit through normally. I could fit if I removed my backpack, turned sideways, compressed every organ I owned, regretted lunch, and accepted temporary humiliation. Invisibility does not make you thinner. I wish it did. I squeezed through. My belt got stuck. For 15 seconds, the missing man nearly became the missing lower half of a man. Then I dropped into the secure room. I did not touch the floor. I caught the lighting frame with both hands and hung there. The thermal camera saw me immediately. An alarm indicator flashed. Kuroda had planned for this. The live stream switched to thermal view. Millions of people saw a glowing human-shaped heat signature hanging from the ceiling inside a locked glass room. I did not know this until later. At the time, I only saw the toy duck below me. I swung once, twice. Then I released one hand, grabbed my rope, and lowered a loop. The loop was invisible while I held it. The second the lower part stopped touching me, the rope became visible. So now a rope appeared from nowhere, dangling above the duck. The crowd outside screamed. I tried to hook the duck. Missed. Tried again. Missed. The duck fell over. Technically, I had completed the challenge. I should have left. But Kuroda had put a bow tie on it. This had become personal. I hooked the duck around its neck, lifted it into the air, grabbed it with my hand, and made it vanish. The crowd lost its mind. Then I realized I had to escape. The room door remained locked. Security teams were rushing in. My invisibility timer had less than 90 seconds. I could climb back up, squeeze through the gap, crawl through the ceiling, and probably get caught when my power expired halfway across a ventilation duct. Or I could improvise. I looked at the glass door. I looked at the crowd. I looked at the duck in my hand. Then the security lock clicked. Kuroda entered the room himself. He wanted to catch me. I wanted the door open. We both got what we wanted for about half a second. The moment the door opened, I slipped past him. He must have felt the air move because he turned instantly and reached out. His hand missed my shoulder by centimeters. I ducked into the crowd. Security blocked the main exits. Perfect. A blocked exit creates a crowd. A crowd creates chaos. Chaos is just invisibility wearing a louder hat. I moved between people, changed direction twice, climbed onto an escalator going down, stepped over the center divider, and rode the opposite escalator back up. Kuroda's guards chased empty space. My timer hit 20 seconds, then 10. I needed somewhere to reappear. I entered a clothing store and dove into a rack of winter coats. My invisibility ended. I was crouched inside 20 puffy jackets holding a plastic duck with a bow tie. A sales employee pulled apart the coats and stared at me. I stared back. I told her I had dropped a contact lens. She looked at the duck. I looked at the duck. She slowly closed the coats again. I left the mall normally 5 minutes later. The internet replayed the footage for weeks. The thermal image proved something invisible and human-shaped had been inside the room. The pressure sensors never triggered. The door never opened until Kuroda entered. The duck disappeared. Kuroda did not pay the reward because nobody had explained how I did it. Technically fair. I kept the duck. Technically theft. I named him General Quack. He sat on the dragon chair in my apartment like a tiny commander. Kuroda became obsessed after that. I could tell because his company began upgrading security in places where missing man incidents had occurred. More thermal cameras, better motion sensors, floor sensors, door counters. It became a game. He built systems. I accidentally broke them while trying to get snacks. One hotel installed a people-counting camera at its executive lounge because several expensive desserts had vanished during private events. Those desserts were not all me. Only 7 of them were me. The new camera counted how many bodies entered and left. The door only unlocked if the count matched the guest registry. I discovered this when I followed Daichi into the hotel for a business conference. I was not invited to the executive lounge. Daichi was. He mentioned they had unlimited mini cheesecakes. I believe some friendships are tested by hardship. Ours was tested by cheesecake. I turned invisible and followed him through the door. The system counted Daichi because his body was visible. It did not count me. Inside, I reappeared in the restroom. Now there was one extra visible person in the lounge. A staff member noticed immediately. I panicked and turned invisible again. Now the count was correct. Then I picked up a cheesecake. The cheesecake vanished. A waiter saw an empty plate. I put the cheesecake back down. It reappeared. The waiter froze. I picked it up. Gone. Put it down. Back. For reasons I still cannot explain, I did this 4 times. The waiter whispered for another employee. I moved away. Then the door alarm started because the system detected an unmatched person count. Kuroda's software locked the lounge. Nobody could leave. I had accidentally created a dessert hostage situation. The guests became annoyed. Staff checked names. Daichi stood near the buffet holding coffee and looking suspiciously relaxed. I had about 3 minutes remaining. I could wait until the door opened and slip out. Instead, I decided to fix the count. I entered the restroom, climbed onto a toilet, opened a maintenance panel, discovered it led nowhere useful, climbed back down, slipped into the kitchen, nearly collided with a chef, hid inside a walk-in refrigerator, remembered I was invisible and did not need to hide, then realized the cold air made my breath visible. Invisibility apparently did not erase condensation. A chef saw floating clouds of breath inside the refrigerator. He closed the door and refused to reopen it. I had locked myself in a refrigerator while invisible. This was not my finest operation. I found an emergency release, exited into the kitchen, and noticed a service elevator. The elevator did not use the lounge people counter. I slipped inside with a cart of dishes and escaped. The system still thought one invisible person remained inside, so the lounge stayed locked for another 40 minutes. Kuroda personally came to reset it. By then I was downstairs eating noodles. The next day, his company released a patch. The patch tracked weight changes. The next week, I accidentally defeated it by standing on a luggage cart. The week after that, they added cart detection. I defeated that by riding on Daichi's suitcase. I did not tell Daichi. He still wonders why his suitcase became harder to pull for exactly 28 seconds. My conflict with Kuroda remained completely one-sided. He had no idea who I was. I had no idea why a wealthy security executive had enough free time to fight an invisible man over cheesecake. But I respected the commitment. Then I met Mina. Mina was not a detective, government agent, hacker, assassin, or secret martial arts genius. She was worse. She was my new neighbor. She moved into the apartment across from mine carrying 6 cardboard boxes, 1 potted cactus, and a camera tripod taller than she was. Within 10 minutes, she had dropped the cactus, caught it with her foot, kicked it into my door, apologized to the cactus before apologizing to me, and explained that she made internet videos about urban mysteries. I immediately disliked the phrase urban mysteries. Then she noticed General Quack sitting on my dragon chair through the open doorway. The duck from Kuroda's challenge had been shown online millions of times. I slammed the door. This was the first time my secret identity almost ended because of interior decoration. For the next week, I lived like prey. Mina filmed videos in the hallway. Mina interviewed neighbors. Mina had a whiteboard covered in printed screenshots of missing man footage. I knew this because I saw it when her door was open. One picture showed the museum fish incident. Another showed the department store dragon chair. Another showed the ramen bowl. A red line connected all 3. I had become a conspiracy diagram 10 meters from my bedroom. This was unacceptable. So I did what any intelligent person would do. I used invisibility to sneak into her apartment and see how much she knew. In my defense, she left the door open while carrying boxes downstairs. I had 8 minutes available by then. I slipped inside. Her apartment looked like a detective agency designed by someone who also collected novelty mugs. Screens everywhere. Camera batteries charging. Maps on the walls. Stacks of notes. At the center was the missing man board. It was terrifyingly good. She had mapped incident locations by date. She had estimated travel time. She had noticed that most sightings occurred near my office district, my apartment neighborhood, and places where I like to eat. That last category was represented by tiny burger stickers. I felt attacked. She had even figured out that the invisible person probably had a time limit because some incidents ended abruptly. She guessed 10 minutes or less. I was impressed. Then I saw her suspect list. There were 47 names. I was not on it. I was offended again. How dare she almost solve everything except me? I moved closer. At the bottom of the board, she had written one question. Why does he keep stealing food but never money? I stared at it for a long time. That was actually a very good question. Then the apartment door closed. Mina had returned. I turned around. She stood in the entryway holding a box. I was invisible, but my shoes had left faint wet prints from the hallway because it had been raining. She saw them. One footprint, then another, appearing by themselves across her floor. I stopped moving. She stopped breathing. I slowly lifted one foot. The wet print ended. For 10 seconds, neither of us moved. Then her cat walked out from behind a box. Of course she had a cat. The cat looked directly at me. Cats always know. It hissed. Mina stared at the empty air. The cat lunged. I dodged. The cat chased me around the couch. Mina watched her pet pursue an invisible target while cushions dented under my knees and papers flew off the table. I reached the door, opened it, escaped, and sprinted into my apartment. My timer still had 4 minutes left. I reappeared and tried to act normal. 10 seconds later, Mina knocked. I opened the door while pretending to yawn. She asked whether I had seen anything strange in the hallway. I said no. Her cat walked past her, entered my apartment without permission, jumped onto the dragon chair, and sat beside General Quack. Mina looked at the duck. I looked at the duck. The cat looked at both of us with the expression of someone preparing testimony. I grabbed the duck and shoved it behind my back. Mina narrowed her eyes. Then she asked where I bought it. I said online. She asked which store. I named a store that had gone bankrupt 3 years earlier. She knew that immediately. Of course she did. I changed the subject by asking if she wanted tea. She said yes. That was worse. For 45 minutes, Mina sat in my apartment drinking tea while I tried to hide every piece of evidence connecting me to the missing man. This included the dragon chair, the duck, a souvenir from the museum, a ramen shop loyalty card, and one screenshot of Kuroda looking angry that I had printed because it made me laugh. I managed to hide the screenshot under a cushion. Mina sat on the cushion. I spent the entire conversation staring at it like it contained a bomb. She talked about her channel. She loved mysteries, but she did not want to expose the missing man if he was just a normal person. She wanted to understand the trick. That made me feel slightly guilty about breaking into her apartment. Then she said she believed the missing man lived somewhere nearby. I almost inhaled a tea leaf. She had narrowed the geographic pattern down to 6 blocks. My building was inside the center. I decided Mina was dangerous. Not physically, statistically. For the next month, my greatest enemy was not Kuroda's thermal cameras. It was avoiding my neighbor while using a power that made me impossible to see. You would think this would be easy. It was not. Mina had cameras everywhere. Not hidden cameras, obvious cameras. She filmed time lapses from her balcony. She mounted an action camera on her cat. She tested motion sensors in the hallway. She once left flour on the floor outside her door because she read that ghosts could leave footprints. I stepped in it while visible and spent an hour cleaning my shoes. Then I had an idea. If Mina was investigating the missing man near my apartment, I could create a sighting somewhere far away and destroy her geographic theory. So on a Saturday, I took a train 40 kilometers across the city and visited an enormous indoor amusement park. I planned to create one harmless, impossible event on camera. Just one. Then I would go home. The amusement park had a mascot named Poco, a round blue bear with 3 eyebrows. I do not know why it had 3 eyebrows. Children loved it. Adults feared it. At noon, Poco performed on a rotating stage in the central plaza. I waited until the crowd was watching. Then I vanished, climbed onto the edge of the stage, and moved a small prop stool 2 meters sideways. That was all. A stool moving by itself. Easy mystery. Then Poco sat down without looking. The stool was no longer there. Poco fell. The giant mascot head rolled off. Inside the costume was not one performer. There were 2 children standing on each other's shoulders. I still do not understand this. Nobody understood this. The children screamed. The audience screamed. The mascot head rolled into a parade float. The parade float's automatic sensor activated. Music blasted. The float began moving 5 minutes early. A second mascot jumped aside. A cotton candy cart tipped over. A cloud of pink sugar exploded into the air and stuck to my invisible body. Suddenly I was visible as a human-shaped cotton candy monster. I looked down. Pink fluff outlined my arms, shoulders, head, and chest. The crowd went silent. Then a child shouted that Poco had summoned a candy ghost. I ran. The cotton candy moved with me because it was touching my clothes. Somehow the sugar itself became invisible in patches and visible where pieces fell off, creating a trail of floating pink clumps. Security guards chased the trail. I ducked behind a game booth, brushed myself clean, reappeared, and walked out holding a giant stuffed penguin I had won earlier. The video received 5 million views in 2 days. Mina moved one of her red pins 40 kilometers away. My plan worked. Then she noticed I had posted a photo from the same amusement park that afternoon. I had uploaded it because the stuffed penguin was funny. She knocked on my door at midnight. I deleted the photo before opening. She already had a screenshot. I claimed coincidence. She stared at me for a long time. Then she smiled. From that day on, Mina stopped trying to find the missing man. She started trying to prove it was me. My peaceful life was over. The funny part was that she still did not have proof. She tested me constantly. She would suddenly turn around in hallways. She would ask where I had been during famous sightings. She invited me to locations where the missing man supposedly might appear, then watched my hands instead of the cameras. I became so paranoid that I started behaving more suspiciously while doing normal things. Once, she asked if I wanted noodles. I panicked and said I was allergic to bowls. Nobody is allergic to bowls. I spent the next week pretending I had a rare ceramic sensitivity. She did not believe me. Eventually, she set a trap. She placed General Quack on a table in the hallway. My General Quack. She had somehow taken him from my apartment. I came home from work, saw the duck, and stopped. Mina's door was slightly open. A camera lens pointed through the gap. She wanted to see my reaction. I walked past the duck as if I had never seen it before. I went into my apartment. Then I turned invisible, came back out, grabbed General Quack, and returned inside. Perfect. Except Mina had placed a tiny bell under the duck. The bell rang when I lifted it. Her door flew open. She saw an empty table. Then my apartment door closing by itself. I had been caught. Almost. She ran across the hallway and knocked. I had 7 minutes of invisibility left, but I could not reappear while holding the duck because she would know. So I opened the window, placed General Quack on the exterior air conditioner ledge, reappeared, and opened the door. Mina rushed inside. She searched the room with her eyes. No duck. She checked under the couch. No duck. She looked at the dragon chair. Empty. I folded my arms and asked what was happening. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Then a pigeon landed outside the window. The pigeon saw General Quack. The pigeon pecked General Quack. General Quack fell 6 floors. Mina and I both watched the plastic duck drop past the window. There was a long silence. I said nothing. Mina slowly turned toward me. I ran downstairs. She chased me. We found General Quack in a shrub. He had lost the bow tie. That was the moment Mina finally stopped pretending. She accused me directly. I denied everything directly. She listed the evidence. I explained each piece with increasingly stupid excuses. The duck was a replica. The amusement park was coincidence. The floating duck outside my window had been placed there by a bird. The bird theory was weak, but technically a bird had been involved. Mina asked me to prove I was not the missing man. I asked how someone proves they are not invisible. She did not have an answer. Neither did I. We stood in the bushes at 1 a.m, arguing quietly over a damaged plastic duck. Then the building security guard came outside and asked what we were doing. Mina said she was investigating a supernatural phenomenon. I said we were looking for a contact lens. The security guard looked at the duck, then at us, then went back inside. I respected him for refusing involvement. Mina did not expose me. That surprised me. Instead, she gave me a deal. She would stop trying to reveal my identity publicly if I let her study the power privately. I said I did not have a power. She told me to stop wasting both our time. I continued denying it for 3 more days. Then she caught me using invisibility to avoid paying a delivery fee. The food had been left at the wrong entrance. I vanished, walked through a staff-only shortcut, grabbed the bag, and returned. Mina was sitting on the stairs eating chips. She watched the bag float toward my apartment. I reappeared. She offered me a chip. I accepted. My secret identity officially had a second member. This should have made my life easier. It did the opposite. Mina became my self-appointed power researcher. The next morning, she arrived at my door at sunrise with a stopwatch, measuring tape, digital scale, thermal camera, 3 sandwiches, and a bicycle helmet. I asked why she brought the helmet. She said science. I did not like that answer. We tested everything. The power still increased by 1 second each morning. It activated instantly if I willed it. I could stop it instantly. Time used in separate bursts added together accurately. Objects I considered worn or carried vanished with me if they were within a certain weight range. Larger objects vanished only if I had firm physical contact and mentally treated them as something I was carrying. This led Mina to ask whether I could carry a person. I said absolutely not. 10 minutes later, she was on my back wearing the bicycle helmet. I activated invisibility. I vanished. Mina did not. From her perspective, the person carrying her disappeared. She fell 1 meter onto a mattress we had prepared. She laughed for 5 straight minutes. I did not. Then she tried standing on my shoes. No. Holding my hand. No. Wrapping herself in my coat while I wore it. The coat vanished. Mina remained visible, apparently being strangled by invisible fabric. We stopped that test quickly. Then she held General Quack while I held her wrist. The duck stayed visible. Then I held the duck while she held my wrist. The duck vanished with me. That confirmed the power centered on what I considered mine or carried. This was scientifically vague but emotionally consistent, which was apparently good enough for supernatural physics. Then Mina asked the question that changed everything. What counted as morning? I laughed. She did not. The power gained 1 second every morning. But did that mean after sleep? At sunrise? At midnight? After 24 hours? By local time? I had never tested it carefully because I was busy moving stools and stealing cheesecake. So we began the morning experiment. I stayed awake through midnight. No increase. I slept from noon to 2 in the afternoon. No increase. I woke before sunrise. No increase. Then at 5:42 a.m., sunlight crossed the horizon. My limit increased by 1 second. Mina checked the weather app. Sunrise was officially 5:42. We stared at each other. The next day, heavy clouds covered the sky. At official sunrise, another second appeared. The power did not care whether I saw the sun. It cared that morning had arrived where I was. Mina immediately opened a world map. I knew that look. It was the same look I had when I first realized buffet meat could vanish. Dangerous curiosity. If the power gave me 1 second every local morning, what happened if I traveled west after sunrise and reached a place where sunrise had not happened yet? Could I experience another morning? Could the power be tricked by time zones? This was ridiculous. So naturally, we bought plane tickets. The first trip was not glamorous. We flew 3 hours west on the cheapest airline Mina could find. The seat in front of me reclined before takeoff and remained in my soul for the entire flight. Our plan was to leave after sunrise, land somewhere that had not reached sunrise yet, and wait. On paper, the idea was brilliant. In practice, airports apparently dislike passengers behaving like astronomers escaping the law of time. Mina spent the flight watching sunrise maps. I spent the flight trying to stop the man beside me from using my shoulder as a pillow. When we landed, the sky was still dark. We rushed outside, not because we were late, because Mina wanted to stand in an open parking lot with accurate horizon visibility, even though we already knew visible sunlight did not matter. At local sunrise, I felt it. 1 second added. A extra second in the same period when I normally would have received only one. Mina stared at her stopwatch. I stared at my hands. Then we both laughed like people who had just discovered a coupon for reality. We immediately tested the limit. Could we fly back east and get another sunrise? No. That location had already passed morning. Could I cross into another time zone where the local date was different and wait for another sunrise? Yes, but only if that place experienced a sunrise I had not already received while physically present. Could I drive back and forth across a time zone border in farm seconds? No. We tried. We wasted 8 hours, 2 tanks of gas, and half a bag of sour candy proving the universe was not completely stupid. It was only partially stupid. The power seemed to record actual sunrise events I personally experienced. I could collect more than one in a 24-hour period if I traveled fast enough, but I could not collect the same sunrise twice. This was not the unlimited exploit Mina hoped for. It was still an exploit. Commercial flights could sometimes give me 2 mornings in 1 long travel day. Carefully planned routes could give me 3, once. With a connection so terrible it felt designed by an enemy, we managed 4. I gained 4 seconds and lost the will to live. Mina called it a success. I called it sleeping on airport carpet in 3 countries. We stopped actively farming mornings after that. 4 extra seconds was not worth eating a sandwich that cost more than my monthly phone bill. But the experiment taught us something more important. The power followed me. It did not belong to my apartment, my city, or any fixed clock. It recognized where I was, and it was still growing. Every day, no exceptions. By the end of the 2nd year, I had more than 12 minutes. 12 minutes changed the feeling of invisibility completely. At 3 minutes, I was sneaking. At 12, I could live inside the gap. I could enter a building unseen, wander around, get lost, Consult a map, get lost again, find a vending machine, remember invisible coins do not help a vending machine, become visible inside a stairwell, buy water, vanish again, and still have time left. I became calmer while invisible than while visible. This was dangerous because confidence makes idiots creative. My first major 12-minute disaster happened at a luxury hotel that Kuroda's company had proudly advertised as ghost-proof. Yes, ghost-proof. He had stopped pretending the missing man was fake and moved directly into competitive architecture. The hotel lobby had thermal cameras, weight-sensitive entrance mats, ultrasonic motion sensors, rotating LiDAR scanners, and a staff member whose entire job seemed to be staring suspiciously at empty spaces. Mina wanted footage for her private research archive. I wanted to see whether the breakfast buffet had the tiny sausages shaped like octopuses. We both had professional motives. I entered normally as a guest. This is important because Mina still claims I broke in. I had a reservation. I paid for a room. I even wore the complimentary slippers. At 6:30 the next morning, I walked toward the restaurant, saw the anti-ghost sensor gate, and felt personally challenged. The gate measured body heat and weight at the same time. If one changed without the other, an alert appeared. I could not simply vanish while standing on it, so I waited for a luggage cart. Kuroda had learned about carts. The system scanned the carts separately. I waited for a cleaning machine. Kuroda had learned about those too. I looked at the ceiling. He had added sensors there. The man was evolving. Then I saw a family with 6 enormous suitcases. Their luggage was stacked on a hotel trolley like a moving wall. I vanished before reaching the gate, crouched behind the suitcases, and pushed upward on the trolley's lower frame just enough to carry part of my weight through my hands. The pressure mat registered the trolley weight, plus a tiny variation. The thermal scanner saw warm gaps between luggage but could not shape them into a person. The LiDAR saw only bags. I passed. I felt like a genius. Then one suitcase fell off. It landed directly on my foot. I did not scream. I reached a higher spiritual state and silently accepted death. The family continued into the lobby while I limped away invisible. The breakfast restaurant was glorious. Tiny octopus sausages, pancakes, eggs, fruit carved into shapes nobody has ever needed fruit to become. I reappeared in a restroom stall, returned to my table like a normal guest, and ate legally. That was it. I had defeated the ghost-proof hotel by making a reservation. Kuroda would have hated that more than any infiltration. Then Mina texted me. She had found something upstairs. A private technology expo was being held in one of the ballrooms. Kuroda himself was demonstrating a new portable detection system. I did not need to go. I had sausages. I was happy. Then Mina sent a photo. Kuroda had General Quack's missing red bow tie displayed inside a glass case. I nearly dropped my fork. Apparently the bow tie had been recovered from the shrub after the pigeon incident. Somehow it ended up in Kuroda's hands. He believed fibers from the duck might contain evidence about the missing man. This was absurd. The bow tie belonged to my duck. There are lines you do not cross. I had 11 minutes left. I vanished under the table. The chair moved backward by itself. A waiter saw it and sighed. He did not even look surprised. That was when I knew the city had become too familiar with me. I reached the ballroom floor through a service corridor. Kuroda's expo had booths displaying cameras, sensors, drones, smart locks, and one machine labeled anomalous occupancy detector. I hated that name. I moved along the wall while invisible. Mina stood near the back pretending to film the public displays. Kuroda was on stage holding a handheld scanner shaped like a large electric toothbrush. The bow tie sat in a glass case beside him. His new device used thermal, ultrasonic, electromagnetic, and air displacement data to detect invisible bodies. I did not understand half of that. I understood the demonstration target. He had placed an empty chair in the center of the stage. He told the audience that if the missing man entered the room, the scanner would find him. I stayed near the wall. The device rotated toward me. A small light changed from green to yellow. Kuroda stopped talking. I stopped moving. The device turned another few degrees. The light became orange. I backed up. The device followed. People in the audience began whispering. Kuroda smiled. That smile annoyed me. So I picked up a helium balloon from a nearby booth and released it. The balloon drifted toward the ceiling. The scanner twitched upward for half a second because its air sensors caught the movement. I moved left, then I grabbed a second balloon, and a third. Within 30 seconds, I had turned a serious security expo into a balloon migration. Kuroda's scanner kept detecting moving pockets of air and temperature differences from the crowd. He recalibrated. I moved closer to the stage. The bow tie was inside a locked case with a vibration alarm. I could not open it without triggering something, so I did not open it. I lifted the entire case. The case vanished because I was carrying it. The audience gasped. The table beneath it was suddenly empty. Kuroda spun around. I walked away holding an invisible glass box the size of a microwave. This was heavier than expected. Also, invisible glass is terrifying because you cannot see the corners you are carrying. I hit my own knee twice. Kuroda's scanner turned bright red. He charged toward me. I ducked behind a booth. He followed. I placed the glass case on the floor. It became visible. Kuroda saw it. He grabbed it. I opened the latch while he was holding it. The vibration alarm did not trigger because the case was technically stable in his hands. I took the bow tie. The bow tie vanished. Kuroda was left holding his own empty case. His expression was magnificent. I returned to the breakfast restaurant 5 minutes later, reappeared in the restroom, tied the bow tie back onto General Quack, and finished my pancakes. Mina joined me. She did not say anything. She just showed me a video of Kuroda standing on stage surrounded by balloons while his evidence disappeared from his own hands. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. Kuroda did not laugh. His company released a new scanner 2 months later. It had balloon filtering. That is how I changed the security industry. Not through innovation. Through spite. Years 3 and 4 became a blur of weird little adventures. My invisibility crossed 18 minutes, then 20, then 24. I stopped counting in seconds and started thinking in episodes. 20 minutes was enough for an entire situation to begin, become ridiculous, and end before I reappeared. I once entered a packed subway station during a service delay, and used invisibility simply to move through the crowd faster. Then the station cat followed me. I did not know the station had a cat. Apparently everybody else did. The cat tracked my invisible legs perfectly, weaving around people while staring upward at me. Commuters noticed. Soon 50 people were following the cat because they thought it was leading them to an open platform. I accidentally became a public transportation prophet. The cat led the entire group directly to a locked maintenance door because I had gone there trying to escape them. I climbed over a railing. The cat stopped. The crowd stopped. A station employee arrived and found 50 passengers silently staring at a cat staring at empty air. The employee resigned from that conversation immediately. Another time, I attended a food festival with Mina. A famous chef was doing a live omelet demonstration. He tossed the omelet too high. I instinctively caught it while invisible. The omelet vanished in midair. The chef froze with his pan raised. I panicked and tossed it back. The omelet reappeared and landed perfectly in the pan. The crowd exploded in applause. The chef bowed like he had planned it. He became famous for his disappearing omelet trick. He spent the next 3 years refusing to explain how it worked. I respected him. At a costume convention, I vanished while wearing a full night outfit and accidentally left the plastic sword behind when my grip slipped. The sword floated down a hallway by itself because its strap remained hooked around an invisible part of my armor for several seconds. People assumed it was an official magical sword performance. The convention gave it an award. At a wedding, I used invisibility to retrieve a ring that had rolled under a stage during the ceremony. I returned it by sliding it across the floor. Everyone thought the venue staff had installed a remote-controlled magnet. The groom thanked the hotel. The hotel took credit. I was furious for about 5 minutes, then realized I had attended for free because I was not actually invited. Fair trade. Mina kept records of everything, not public records. She never revealed me. She built a private archive with exact daily limits, object behavior, sensor interactions, range tests, and what she called incident categories. Category 1 was harmless movement. Category 2 was accidental public panic. Category 3 was Kuroda-related nonsense. Category 4 was food. Food had the most entries. She also noticed something I had not. My body did not seem tired while invisible. I still used energy. I still got hungry. But small things changed. My eyes did not dry out as quickly. I could hold my breath slightly longer. Cuts did not bleed visibly until I reappeared. though they still existed. Most strangely, photos taken with thermal cameras showed my body temperature dropping very slowly during long invisibility sessions. Mina joked that the universe was putting me in low power mode. I laughed. Then we tested aging markers. That was less funny. After 4 years, Mina compared old medical scans, skin measurements, and some complicated biological tests she convinced a research clinic to perform without explaining why. The result was bizarre. Time spent invisible did not seem to age me normally. It was not complete stasis. My hair still grew. My heart still beat. I could still get tired. But certain cellular aging markers slowed dramatically while the power was active. I stared at the results. Mina stared at me. Then she said I had accidentally unlocked the world's least efficient immortality plan. At 24 minutes per day, I was saving less than half an hour of aging. Completely useless. But the limit was growing. Every day. If I ever reached hours, I would spend hours each day aging more slowly. If I reached 12 hours, half my life could pass in invisible low power mode. If I reached 24 hours, things got mathematically strange. I decided not to think about it. I had more immediate problems. Kuroda had launched a subscription service. For a monthly fee, businesses could install missing man protection. My supernatural ability had become a software feature. I considered this deeply insulting. The service used cameras to look for doors opening without visible people, weight changes with no object, thermal anomalies, and unexplained item movement. When the system detected a possible event, it sent staff an alert. The alert icon was a cartoon ghost. That part I liked. Unfortunately, the system worked. I discovered this in a bookstore. I was invisible because I wanted to read the back cover of a book blocked by a group of people. I moved one book 2 centimeters. A nearby tablet chimed. A cartoon ghost appeared on the screen. 3 employees looked directly toward me. I froze. One employee raised a thermal scanner. I crouched. Another employee closed the aisle exits. I was trapped in the self-help section. I looked at the books around me. One title said, "Stay calm under pressure." I hated it immediately. I picked it up. The book vanished. The system chimed again. Bad idea. I put it down. Another chime. Worse idea. The employees moved closer. Then I noticed the store's automated inventory robots. Small shelf-scanning machines rolled through the aisles every night. One was nearby. I placed the self-help book on top of it. The robot rolled away. The missing man system detected unexplained item movement and sent the employees chasing the robot. I walked out the opposite side. The robot was detained. I later bought the book out of guilt. It was not helpful. Kuroda's system spread everywhere. Restaurants, hotels, offices, museums, event halls. For several months, being invisible became harder than being visible. I could still move unseen, but touching anything created digital breadcrumbs, so I adapted again. I stopped touching doors. I followed people through them. I stopped moving objects. I waited for automation. I stopped crossing empty rooms. I moved inside groups, using normal human activity to hide the abnormal parts. Mina called it social camouflage. I called it walking near loud people. My favorite technique was joining tour groups. Tour groups are natural stealth systems. They move together. They open doors. They block cameras. They create constant noise. Nobody can remember exactly how many people were in them. I once crossed an entire historic palace behind 20 tourists wearing matching yellow hats. Kuroda's sensors detected absolutely nothing unusual. The tour guide did notice that the group's snack bag became mysteriously lighter. That was unrelated. By year 6, I had more than 36 minutes. By year 8, nearly 49. Mina and I had both changed jobs, moved apartments once, and stopped treating the power as a temporary mystery. It was just part of life. Every morning, another second. I still checked. I never missed a day. Some birthdays made me think about the scale of it. At first, a birthday meant 365 more seconds than the year before, just over 6 minutes. Then I would remember that those minutes never disappeared. They stacked permanently. Year after year, I was slowly becoming impossible to contain, 6 minutes at a time. Naturally, I used this unstoppable long-term growth to improve my grocery shopping. Weekend supermarket crowds were brutal. I would vanish, move through the aisles, reappear beside whatever I needed, place it in my basket, vanish again, and continue. I never stole anything. I paid normally. But security footage showed a basket teleporting between sections while groceries appeared inside it. One store manager reviewed 2 months of footage and concluded they had a haunted shopping basket. They removed the basket from service. I knew, because Mina found it at a charity auction listed as authentic paranormal retail equipment. She bought it. It now sits in her apartment. I refused to touch it. Year 10 was the milestone. I had been waiting for it since the serial spreadsheet morning. 1 hour. It arrived quietly. No lightning. No glowing symbol. No mysterious voice congratulating me. At sunrise, the number in my mind simply crossed 60 minutes. I stood on my balcony with coffee. Nina stood beside me holding a stopwatch even though we had stopped needing one years earlier. I activated invisibility. She watched me disappear. Then we waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. At 30 minutes, Mina started eating my breakfast because she claimed unattended toast was legally abandoned. At 45, I went downstairs, walked around the block, bought another coffee while briefly visible behind a delivery truck, vanished again, returned, and took my toast back. At 59 minutes, I stood in front of the balcony door. 1 hour passed. I still had time left. I reappeared. Mina applauded once. I bowed. Then her cat, now much older and even more judgmental, slapped my ankle. The milestone felt huge for about 20 seconds. Then I had to go to work. That was the strange part. A power can become extraordinary, without your life becoming extraordinary with it. I could disappear for an hour. I still forgot passwords. I still missed trains. I still burned rice. I still spent 10 minutes searching for my phone while holding it. But an hour opened possibilities I had never had before. I could cross whole districts unseen. I could enter crowded events, leave through different exits, wait through security changes, and never be forced to reappear in a bad location. More importantly, cameras stopped showing short anomalies. They started showing gaps with stories inside them. A locked office would look normal at 2 o'clock. At 2:03, a chair had moved. At 2:17, a cabinet was open. At 2:31, a coffee cup had relocated. At 2:48, the lights were off. At 2:59, everything was back where it started except one pen was missing because it had rolled under a desk and I could not find it. Security teams hated this. Kuroda loved it. By then, he had gray in his hair and a whole division dedicated to unexplained occupancy. I had accidentally created jobs. Mina showed me an interview where Kuroda said the missing man was no longer a security anomaly. He called me a moving blind spot. That sounded cool. Too cool. I printed it and put it on my refrigerator. Kuroda's newest systems did not try to see me directly. They tracked consequences, airflow changes, dust movement, floor vibration, tiny sound differences, Bluetooth signal distortion, doors moving, elevator weight, even changes in how automatic lighting reacted. He had finally understood the same thing I learned years earlier. Invisibility does not remove you from the world. It only removes the world's easiest way to notice you. So I needed a new trick. I found it at a shopping mall fountain. I was testing a pair of noise-canceling headphones when Mina messaged me that Kuroda's newest sensor van was parked outside. The van was collecting environmental data during a public demonstration. I decided to walk past it invisible. The sensors detected me instantly. Not my body. My absence. The system had mapped normal air currents and background noise. When I crossed the monitored area, my body blocked tiny patterns that should have continued. On a screen inside the van, a vague human-shaped hole appeared in the data. I could not hide by being invisible. I was being detected because I occupied space. For most people, this would be a serious problem. For me, it was an invitation to become stupid at a higher level. I walked into the mall fountain. Not deep, just ankle-high water. The system suddenly received thousands of new disturbances from splashes, moving reflections, pump vibration, and people reacting to water moving by itself. My data silhouette vanished into the noise. I stepped out and walked through a children's bubble machine display. Hundreds of bubbles collided with invisible me, bursting constantly. The sensors went crazy. Then I crossed behind a line of rotating fans in an appliance store. Airflow became meaningless. Then through a perfume display where automatic sprayers fired every few seconds. Then beside a giant speaker demonstration. Then I stood behind a robot vacuum. By the time I reached the van, Kuroda's environmental model had collapsed into nonsense. The screen showed overlapping alerts everywhere. Invisible human near fountain. Invisible human near appliance store. Invisible human near cosmetics. Invisible human near electronics. Invisible human apparently moving at 200 kilometers per hour between them because the software was trying to connect unrelated anomalies. I knocked once on the van door. Kuroda opened it. Nobody was there. I knocked on the opposite side. He turned. I walked away. Mina recorded the whole thing from a cafe. That night, Kuroda's company issued another patch. The patch was called Noise Resilience Update. I framed the release notes. At 1 hour, my life settled into a new rhythm. I did not use the full limit every day. Sometimes I used none at all. That surprised younger me. The man who once spent 90 seconds making a soda can crawl. But when you can disappear for an hour, you stop treating every second like candy. You save it because you know what an hour can do. And occasionally, what an hour could do was rescue me from the worst escape room ever created. Daichi invited me. He still did not know about my power. Somehow, after a decade of friendship and dozens of supernatural incidents around him, he believed I was simply lucky. I respected his commitment to not thinking deeply. The escape room was pirate-themed. 6 of us entered. The staff locked the door. We had 60 minutes to solve puzzles and find a key. Within 5 minutes, Daichi broke a decorative compass. Within 10, another player became convinced a fake parrot contained a clue and tried to remove its head. At 15, the room's electronic system malfunctioned. The lights flickered. The emergency release failed. The staff intercom stopped working. We were actually locked in. Everyone panicked. I did not. For once, the power had given me the perfect answer to a stupid problem. I vanished in the dark, reached the door, realized invisibility still did not let me walk through it, and felt extremely foolish. Then I checked the fake treasure chest, climbed onto it, opened a ceiling panel, entered a maintenance crawl space, moved above 3 different rooms, dropped into a staff corridor, unlocked our door from outside, then returned through the ceiling before becoming visible. From everyone else's perspective, the locked pirate door simply opened by itself at minute 23. Daichi shouted that we had solved it. We had not solved anything. The staff gave us the record anyway because their system had no category for structural escape. Our team photo still hangs on their wall. I'm holding the broken compass. The next milestone was not mine. It was Mina's. After years of keeping my secret, she finally made a video about the missing man that did not expose me but changed the public story. She compiled incidents where the invisible figure had helped people, returned lost items, stopped accidents, and mostly avoided taking anything valuable. She argued that the missing man was probably not a thief or a spy. He was probably just a person with terrible impulse control. I thought that was unfairly accurate. The video became her biggest upload ever. Kuroda watched it. I knew because he contacted her. He invited Mina to tour his company's research headquarters. He wanted her perspective on the missing man. Mina accepted immediately. Then she looked at me. I knew that look too. Absolutely not. 3 days later, I was invisible in the back seat of her taxi on the way to Kuroda Security Research Center. Kuroda Security Research Center looked exactly like the headquarters of a man who had spent 10 years arguing with empty rooms. The building was a black glass cube surrounded by cameras. Not normal cameras. Cameras watching other cameras. There were sensors above the doors, under the doors, beside the doors, and probably emotionally attached to the doors. A large sign in the lobby said, "Unauthorized invisible occupancy prohibited." I took a photo of it while invisible. Mina entered through the front with her visitor badge. I followed behind a delivery worker carrying 3 boxes of printer toner. The entrance scanner beeped. I froze. A security guard looked at the screen. The screen displayed possible mass discrepancy. The guard looked at the delivery worker, then at the boxes, then at the floor. I held my breath. The worker shifted the boxes from one arm to the other. The scanner recalculated and cleared the warning. I slipped through. 10 years of security technology defeated by a man adjusting toner. I almost felt bad for Kuroda. Almost. Mina was taken upstairs to a conference room. I followed at a distance. The research center was terrifyingly impressive. There were test corridors with transparent walls, rooms filled with sensor grids, drone charging stations, thermal gates, pressure floors, directional microphones, and robotic platforms carrying devices I could not identify. One room contained nothing except 50 hanging ribbons. I later learned the ribbons were there to reveal air movement. At the time, I assumed Kuroda had finally become artistic. I moved carefully. The trick was not avoiding every sensor. That was impossible. The trick was making every sensor believe another sensor was responsible. When a pressure tile reacted, I walked beside a cleaning robot. When thermal cameras turned, I stayed near warm equipment. When microphones listened, I moved during door noise. When airflow sensors activated, I waited for ventilation cycles. I had spent a decade accidentally training for this building. Kuroda had spent a decade building it for me. Neither of us should have been proud. Mina's meeting began in a glass conference room overlooking a huge laboratory. Kuroda entered carrying a tablet. He looked older than the first time I saw him on television, but his suit was still so perfect I suspected it had never known gravity. They talked about public sightings, behavioral patterns, and whether the missing man seemed dangerous. Mina carefully avoided lying whenever possible. This made her answers hilarious. Was the missing man organized? Sometimes. Did he plan incidents? Not always. Was he motivated by money? Almost certainly not. Was food involved more often than expected? Yes. Kuroda took that last answer very seriously. I stood behind him trying not to laugh. Then he placed General Quack on the table. Not my General Quack. A replica. Same yellow plastic. Same red bow tie. Same ridiculous expression. Kuroda said he had commissioned it because he believed the duck incident revealed the missing man's psychology. I almost became visible from pure offense. He believed I had taken the original duck not because it was valuable, but because it represented victory. Correct. He believed the missing man had a sense of humor. Correct. He believed the missing man repeatedly returned to challenges that were emotionally unnecessary. Extremely correct. Then Kuroda said the person was probably listening right now. My entire body locked. Mina did not react. That woman deserved an award. Kuroda turned his chair slightly. He looked directly toward the empty space where I stood. For one long second, I wondered if he could see me. Then he smiled. He said that if the missing man had come with Mina, he was welcome to tour the building. No alarms would be triggered intentionally. No attempt would be made to identify him. Kuroda simply wanted to know whether 10 years of work had produced a facility the Invisible Man respected. This was the strangest invitation I had ever received. I did not move. Mina calmly asked whether that meant the building was a challenge. Kuroda said no. Then he added that the restricted 12th floor was definitely not part of the tour. I hated him. He knew exactly what he was doing. The 12th floor became the only thing in the building I cared about. Mina spent another hour touring public labs while I resisted temptation. I lasted 11 minutes. I entered a service elevator invisible. The button panel required a badge for floor 12. I did not have one. A researcher entered, scanned her badge, and selected floor 9. I waited. Another employee entered on floor 9 and selected 11. I waited again. Nobody selected 12. The elevator descended. I rode it all the way back to the lobby. Then up to 6. Then down to 2. For 15 minutes, I became the world's most secret passenger with no destination. Eventually, I gave up and took the stairs. The 12th floor stairwell door had 2 locks, a badge reader, a camera, and a sensor bar. I could not open it. I looked up. Ceiling access. Too obvious. I looked down. Maintenance gap. Too small. I looked at the fire extinguisher cabinet. No reason. I was thinking. Then the door opened from the other side. Kuroda walked through alone. He paused with one hand on the door. He did not look around. He just held it open for 3 extra seconds. I slipped past him. He knew. Maybe not where I was. Maybe not who I was. But he knew I would come. Floor 12 was not a secret weapons lab. It was a museum. A museum of me. I stopped in the hallway. Behind glass displays were replicas, photos, reports, and objects connected to famous missing man incidents. A model of the electronics store glass case, a tiny dragon chair, a printout of the haunted buffet footage, a copy of the Golden Fish Museum thermal image. One display contained the self-help book from the bookstore incident. Another contained a hotel cheesecake under a fake preservation dome. I hoped it was fake. If it was 10-year-old cheesecake, Kuroda had bigger problems than me. A wall timeline tracks sightings across the city. There were thousands. Not all were mine. That was interesting. People blamed me for automatic doors malfunctioning, pets knocking over cups, wind-moving signs, lost socks, train delays, missing umbrellas, broken vending machines, and one incident involving 17 synchronized toilets flushing in an empty stadium. I had nothing to do with the toilets. I want that officially recorded. At the center of the museum stood a large screen showing Kuroda's best model of my daily time limit. I walked closer. He had estimated the growth pattern. Not perfectly, but close. The graph increased almost linearly from the first known sightings. His estimate said I could currently remain undetectable for 58 to 64 minutes. My real limit was just over 61. I felt a chill. For 10 years, I had thought Kuroda was chasing ghosts with expensive gadgets. He had actually been measuring me. Then I saw a note beside the graph. Projected 2-hour threshold, approximately year 20. Projected 4-hour threshold, approximately year 40. Long-term containment considered impractical. I stared at that sentence. Long-term containment considered impractical. Then beneath it, in smaller text, Kuroda had added a handwritten note. Good. That changed how I saw him. He did not want to catch me anymore. Maybe he never really had. Maybe I had become his favorite impossible problem. I heard footsteps. Kuroda entered the museum. I remained invisible. He walked to the central display and stood beside me without knowing exactly where I was. He spoke to the empty room. He said he had spent years trying to build a perfect system, and eventually realized perfection would ruin the game. That was more dialogue than I wanted from him, so I responded the only way I knew how. I picked up the replica General Quack. It vanished from the display. Kuroda smiled. I put it back. Then I rotated it backward. He laughed. It was the first time I had ever heard him laugh. It sounded surprisingly normal. Then an alarm exploded through the building. I nearly jumped into the ceiling. Red lights flashed. Security doors began closing. Kuroda's smile disappeared. I assumed he had betrayed me. Then he looked genuinely confused. The building announcement reported a containment failure in Laboratory 7. I did not know what Laboratory 7 contained. I hoped it was not invisible bears. It was worse. Robot dogs. 6 experimental security robots had received a corrupted training update and now classified every moving object as unauthorized. This included staff, chairs, doors, other robot dogs, and one extremely unfortunate mop. The machines were not dangerous in the dramatic anime sense. They fired no lasers. They had no weapons. They did have powerful wheels, grabbing arms, alarms, and the confidence of appliances that had never been told no. One robot dragged a rolling chair down the hallway at full speed while another chased it. A third had seized the mop and refused to release it. The research center descended into mechanical nonsense. Emergency doors locked to contain the robots. This also trapped Mina's tour group in a lab. Kuroda rushed toward the stairs. I followed. For the first time, we were on the same side. He knew an invisible person was moving near him, but could not coordinate with me directly. So we developed a communication system instantly. He pointed at a door. I opened it. He pointed at a sensor. I covered it. He held out a badge. I took it. The badge vanished. He looked offended for half a second, apparently because even after 10 years he still enjoyed seeing objects disappear. We reached Laboratory 7. A robot dog rolled past carrying the mop like a captured flag. Kuroda tried to access the control console. A second robot grabbed his trouser cuff. I pulled the robot backward. From Kuroda's perspective, the machine suddenly began losing a wrestling match against the floor. He escaped. I released the robot. It spun around, scanning for me. Its LiDAR detected my shape. Its thermal camera detected my heat. Its microphone detected my breathing. It knew exactly where I was. Finally, an opponent that did not care that I was invisible. The robot charged. I moved behind another robot. The two collided. A third joined. Within seconds, 3 expensive security machines were spinning in a pile because their targeting systems kept classifying each other as moving obstacles. I grabbed the mop. The mop vanished. The first robot froze. Its object tracker had lost the thing it had been protecting. I placed the mop behind it. The mop reappeared. The robot turned. I grabbed it again. Gone. Reappeared on the other side. For the next minute, I made a robot dog chase a teleporting mop around the lab. Kuroda stared at the scene. I could feel his respect increasing against his will. Mina later called this the peak of my career. I disagree. The peak came 30 seconds later when I rode one robot dog like a horse. I had to reach the manual shutdown panel across the lab. The floor was filled with machines. So I jumped onto the back of one, grabbed its upper frame, and let it drive. Because I was touching it but could not mentally consider a 50-kilogram robot something I was carrying, the machine remained visible. The security cameras recorded an empty robot driving erratically while its suspension compressed under invisible weight. I leaned left. It turned. I leaned right. It corrected. I had accidentally discovered invisible robots surfing. I reached the panel, hit the shutdown control, and all 6 machines stopped. One was still holding Kuroda's trouser fabric. Another was tangled in a chair. The mop lay in the center of the room like a war hero. Mina's group was released. Kuroda restored the building. Nobody was injured. The official report blamed a software update. The unofficial security footage became legendary inside Kuroda's company. Employees started calling the mop incident the invisible cavalry charge. Kuroda never corrected them. After that day, our rivalry changed. He still built systems. I still broke them accidentally. But sometimes he sent Mina invitations to demonstrations with one extra visitor badge left blank. I never wore it. I kept one in my wallet anyway. The years continued. 11, 12, 13. My daily limit passed 67 minutes, then 73, then 79. Nothing dramatic happened at the exact milestones anymore. Time simply accumulated. The power had become like a second clock inside me, one that only moved forward. Every sunrise added one more piece. I traveled more, not to farm mornings, mostly because being invisible made airports entertaining. I never bypassed tickets or security. That would create real problems. I used invisibility after clearing security like a normal passenger, usually for extremely important reasons such as avoiding people selling credit cards near the gate. Once, I vanished inside an airport lounge to take a nap in an empty chair. When I woke, a man was sitting on me. He had not seen me. He simply chose the chair that appeared empty. I woke under a stranger holding a newspaper. I could not move without creating a supernatural event. So I stayed there for 6 minutes while Mina, sitting across the room, nearly died trying not to laugh. Eventually the man stood up. I escaped. I never slept invisible in public again. On a cruise ship, I learned that invisibility and ocean wind are a bad combination because loose hats become everyone's problem. I was wearing a cap. The cap vanished with me. A gust blew it off my head. The instant it lost contact, it appeared in midair above the deck and flew into the sea. 30 passengers saw a hat materialize from nothing and launch itself overboard. The captain received 3 ghost reports. One passenger threw another hat after it as an offering. I still feel responsible for that hat. At a giant music festival, I discovered the opposite problem. Crowds were no longer obstacles. I could vanish for more than an hour and flow through tens of thousands of people unseen. But nobody made space for me. I was bumped, stepped on, elbowed, hugged accidentally, covered in glitter, and once handed a glowing bracelet by a woman who apparently sensed I was there without seeing me. I held the bracelet. It vanished. She screamed with joy because she thought it was part of the show. For the next 10 minutes, I waved the bracelet around while invisible, making it blink in and out as I released and caught it. A crowd formed. The festival lighting crew assumed one of their drones was malfunctioning. I had accidentally become a stage effect. The video was viewed 80 million times. People called it the Phantom Glow Stick. Kuroda sent Mina a message containing only a tired face emoji. That may have been his greatest moment of character development. At year 15, I had over an hour and a half. By then, people no longer discussed whether the missing man existed. The question had changed to where he would appear next. I hated that wording because I technically did the opposite of appearing. There were documentaries. There were cheap costumes. There were missing man-themed cafes where waiters moved food using magnets and fishing lines. I visited one. The effects were terrible. A fake floating spoon jerked like it was being attacked by a tiny fish. I became invisible and corrected it. The spoon moved smoothly across the table. The waiter stared. Then I lifted a cup. The cup vanished. The waiter sat down. I felt bad and reappeared in the restroom before paying normally. The cafe added a plaque claiming the real missing man had visited. For once, the claim was true. Merchandise became unavoidable. Invisible Man hoodies. Empty action figure boxes. Transparent keychains. One company sold a limited edition General Quack replica. Kuroda bought the first one. Mina bought the second. I bought 6. I regret nothing. I had an army now. The strangest effect of long invisibility was how often people forgot a space could contain someone. An empty room became private instantly. People practiced presentations, sang badly, complained about coworkers, ate snacks they were hiding, made faces at themselves in reflective windows. I learned far too much about humanity by accidentally existing where nobody thought a person could exist. I created a strict personal rule not to deliberately spy on private conversations. Not because I suddenly became noble, because overhearing people is mostly boring. The average secret is not treasure or conspiracy. It is someone admitting they broke the office coffee machine. One afternoon, I spent 40 invisible minutes trapped in a conference room because a manager came in to rehearse the same 5-minute speech 7 times. By the end, I knew the quarterly sales numbers better than he did. I nearly corrected him from the corner. That would have been worth the panic. I resisted. Growth changed my problem-solving style too. When I only had seconds, every move needed precision. When I had minutes, I could improvise. With hours approaching, I could simply wait. Waiting is an underrated superpower. Locked hallway? Wait for someone to open it. Crowded exit? Wait for the crowd to thin. Security patrol? Wait for it to pass. Kuroda hated this development because no censor can defeat patience without becoming extremely annoying to everyone else. He tried. One office system kept doors locked for random extra delays to catch invisible followers. Employees complained so much that the company removed it in 3 days. I never even encountered the system. The visible people defeated it for me. Year 17 gave me 1 hour and 43 minutes. Year 18, 1 hour and 49. Year 19, 1 hour and 55. Then came year 20, 2 hours. Technically, the exact 2-hour mark arrived after a few extra weeks depending on leap years and the strange bonus sunrises from my travel experiments. Mina had tracked every second. I had stopped arguing with her spreadsheet around year 12. 2 full hours of invisibility. I was in my 40s by then. I did not look exactly the same as when the power began. That would have been creepy. But I looked younger than I should have. The slowed aging effect had accumulated. Years of daily invisible time added up to months where my body seemed to have aged at a reduced rate. Mina claimed the difference was measurable. I claimed good skincare. Daichi claimed I was a vampire. That was funny, because vampire had been my second theory on day 1. He still did not know. At least, I thought he did not. I had become less certain over the years. Daichi had witnessed too many impossible things and asked too few questions. Once, during dinner, he casually moved his drink away from an empty chair before I sat there invisible. I did not know whether that was coincidence. I chose peace and never asked. For the 2-hour milestone, Mina wanted a controlled test. I wanted lunch. We compromised by doing both at a giant train station complex filled with restaurants, stores, offices, underground passages, and enough cameras to film a small nation. The goal was simple. I would vanish at noon and remain invisible for 2 hours while moving continuously through the complex. Mina would later collect publicly accessible camera footage, sensor logs from friendly businesses, and our own trackers to map my path. I carried no tracker. A tracker becoming invisible with me would not transmit reliably inside some buildings, and a visible tracker floating through the station would defeat the purpose. Instead, we agreed on checkpoints. At noon, I stood beside a giant clock and vanished. For the first time, I did not feel like I was starting a trick. I felt like I was leaving the visible world for a while. I walked through the station. 1 hour passed, then another. I ate lunch by reappearing briefly inside a private rental booth, which technically interrupted the test, so Mina complained later. I told her noodles were more important than methodological purity. I vanished again. I crossed 4 concourses, 2 shopping levels, a rooftop garden, an underground market, 6 elevators, 3 escalators, 1 moving walkway, and a children's toy store where a motion-activated dinosaur roared at me despite my invisibility. I took that personally and made it wear a hat. Security footage from those 2 hours looked like a long chain of tiny impossibilities. A door opened. A plant moved. An elevator gained weight with no passenger. A fountain splashed around invisible ankles. A store curtain shifted. A toy dinosaur's hat rose into the air and settled on its head. A crowded platform opened a narrow moving gap around something nobody could see. The footage did not contain one dramatic event. It contained a ghost-shaped journey. Mina edited the path together privately. Kuroda watched it with us. He had retired from daily company management by then, but still consulted whenever something impossible annoyed him. When the 2-hour timeline ended, he stared at the map and shook his head. His entire career had begun with trying to explain 1-second anomalies. Now I could disappear long enough to watch half a movie and still have time to steal the popcorn. Not that I would. Movie popcorn is too expensive to create that kind of karma. Kuroda announced his retirement challenge a month later. He called it his final test for the missing man. The public thought it was a marketing event. It was, but it was also personal. He rented an abandoned shopping center scheduled for renovation and turned it into what can only be described as an Invisible Man obstacle course designed by someone with too much money and 20 years of grudges. There were sensor halls, thermal rooms, moving floors, robot patrols, air curtains, laser grids, foam sprayers designed to coat invisible bodies, glitter cannons. Yes, glitter cannons. Kuroda remembered the amusement park cotton candy incident and had apparently decided powders were my natural predator. At the center of the complex, inside a transparent vault, was the target, a pudding cup. Not expensive pudding. Normal convenience store caramel pudding. Kuroda placed it on a pedestal and told cameras that if the missing man could take one bite and return the cup before his time expired, Kuroda would publicly concede that perfect invisible person security was impossible. The internet treated this like a championship match. People gathered outside the old mall. Live streams covered every camera feed. Mina was invited as an analyst. Daichi texted me asking whether I thought the missing man would show up. I told him probably not. Then I put on comfortable shoes. At sunrise that day, my limit increased by 1 more second. I had a little over 2 hours available. I stood outside the mall among the crowd while Kuroda began the countdown. He did not know where I was. Nobody did except Mina. Maybe Daichi. The doors opened for staff. I vanished. And for the first time in 20 years, I felt nervous. Not because the building was dangerous, because Kuroda knew me too well. The first corridor looked easy. Empty floor, white walls, no visible sensors. That meant it was terrible. I tossed nothing because throwing objects would reveal me. I stepped forward slowly. The floor remained quiet. Second step, nothing. Third, a speaker played a cheerful chime. Then the entire hallway filled with bubbles. Thousands of bubbles poured from ceiling vents. Kuroda had remembered the mall experiment. Bubbles outlined my body as they collided with me. The cameras saw a human-shaped gap moving through foam. I ran. Bad choice. More bubbles burst against me. The system tracked the trail. A door ahead began closing. I slid under it with half a second to spare. The crowd outside watching the live stream cheered even though they could not see me. Room 2 contained 12 fans blowing colored paper ribbons in different directions. Airflow sensors tracked disruptions. I crawled under the fan level. Kuroda had floor sensors. I climbed onto a moving maintenance rail along the wall. Kuroda had rail sensors. I hung from the underside of the rail. Apparently he did not have underside sensors. I passed. Room 3 was dark and full of thermal cameras. The walls were heated to body temperature. Clever. My heat signature blended into the environment. That actually helped me. Then cold mist sprayed from the ceiling. My warm body created a visible human-shaped disturbance. I grabbed a heated blanket hanging on a test rack and wrapped it around myself. The blanket vanished because I wore it. My outer temperature shifted closer to the walls. The cameras lost me. I kept the blanket. I looked like nothing, but emotionally I felt like a stealth burrito. Room 4 contained robot dogs. Of course it did. Not 6, 20. They activated together. Their LiDAR mapped me instantly. I stood still. They surrounded the empty space around me. The crowd watching outside could see the robots forming a perfect circle around nothing. I waited. They waited. I moved 1 centimeter. All 20 moved 1 centimeter. This was going nowhere. Then I remembered the old lab. The mop. There was no mop. Kuroda had removed every movable object from the room. Clever old man. So I removed a shoe. The shoe became visible when it left my hand. 20 robot dogs turned toward it. I threw the shoe. They chased it. I ran barefoot toward the exit. Halfway there, I realized I wanted the shoe back. I doubled back. This was a mistake. 20 robots were fighting over it. I grabbed the shoe from the center of the pile. It vanished. The robots froze. Then all 20 detected me again. I ran harder. I escaped with one sock missing. Somewhere in that room, a robot dog owns my sock. Room 5 was the glitter chamber. The door closed behind me. I heard a mechanical click. I looked upward even though nobody could see me do it. Cannons fired from all 4 corners. I dove behind a transparent shield. Glitter exploded across the room. The shield protected most of me. One cloud hit my left arm. The glitter vanished where it touched my sleeve but remained visible as it fell away. A sparkling outline of my arm appeared for several seconds. The crowd screamed. I shook it off. Then I noticed something important. The glitter was conductive foil. Tiny sensors in the room tracked where pieces disappeared from camera view and reappeared after losing contact. Kuroda had weaponized arts and crafts. I used the heated blanket as a shield, wrapped it around a rolling transparent panel, then pushed the panel across the room while staying behind it. The glitter stuck to the panel. The system tracked the wrong shape. I escaped. 40 minutes gone. I was not even halfway to the pudding. The next zone was the food court. Every table held something different. Ramen, cheesecake, garlic beef, mini octopus sausages. Kuroda had recreated my entire criminal history in snacks. This was psychological warfare. I knew every plate was trapped. Pressure sensors, cameras, weight scales, maybe DNA swabs. I ignored them. Then I saw one bowl of noodles from the ramen shop that had first left food for the missing man years ago. A small sign beside it said, "Still free for our invisible friend." That was unfair. I sat down. The chair sensor triggered immediately. An alarm flashed. I did not care. I became visible. For 1 second. Just one. The live stream caught my back as I leaned over the bowl. But my face remained hidden behind the hood Mina had insisted I wear. Then I vanished again and ate 2 bites. The crowd outside exploded because after 20 years, the missing man had deliberately shown a piece of himself on camera. Kuroda stared at the feed from the control room. I could not see him, but Mina later told me he smiled. I left the ramen untouched after that. I had a pudding to steal. The final security corridor was brilliant. No sensors, no cameras, no robots. Just one long empty hallway with a bench in the middle. I did not trust it. I waited 5 minutes. Nothing. 10. Nothing. I walked slowly. No alarm. I reached the bench. A sign on it said, "Sit down, Hiro." I stopped breathing. Not missing man. Hiro. My name. For 20 years. Kuroda had never called me that. He was not supposed to know. I looked around. No camera that I could see. I sat. A speaker under the bench clicked on. Kuroda's voice said he had known for 6 years. 6 years. I nearly became visible from embarrassment. Apparently I had once used my credit card at a cafe 12 minutes before a missing man incident in a building that required at least 10 minutes of travel time. That alone proved nothing. But Mina had been present at too many sightings. The duck replica in my apartment had appeared in the background of one of her videos. My public photos matched travel patterns. My work absences correlated with several famous incidents. Most importantly, Kuroda had met me once at a technology expo while I was visible and noticed I had a bruise on my knee exactly where the invisible person carrying the glass case had struck something minutes earlier. I remembered that bruise. I had blamed the furniture. Kuroda had not exposed me because he did not care who I was. Knowing the answer was less interesting than testing the power. I sat invisible on the bench feeling strangely emotional. Then the speaker added that Mina had asked him not to reveal it. I immediately stopped being emotional and became offended. She knew he knew? I was surrounded by traitors. The speaker clicked again. Kuroda told me the pudding was ahead. And then he wished me luck. The final door opened. I entered the vault room. The pudding sat in the center under a transparent dome. No visible guards. No moving sensors. I had 53 minutes left. Enough. I examined the dome. Locked. The pedestal had weight sensors. The floor had pressure tiles. The ceiling had cameras. Thermal scanners covered every angle. Airflow sensors lined the walls. The pudding cup itself had a tiny accelerometer attached. Kuroda had learned everything. I could not touch the cup without triggering something, but the challenge did not say I had to avoid alarms. It only said take 1 bite and return it before my time expired. I laughed silently. For 20 years, Kuroda and I had kept inventing harder ways to play the same game. At the end, the simplest answer remained the best. I walked straight to the pedestal. Every sensor triggered. Alarms screamed. Lights flashed. The live stream filled with warnings. I lifted the dome. It vanished in my hands. I grabbed the pudding. It vanished. I opened the lid. The lid appeared when I set it down. I took the spoon. It vanished. I ate one bite, then two, because the pudding was actually very good. Then I stopped, because rules are rules. I put the cup back. It reappeared on the pedestal with one neat spoonful missing. I replaced the lid. I lowered the dome. Then I stepped away. The entire operation took 22 seconds. The crowd outside erupted. Kuroda publicly conceded. Perfect invisible person security was impossible. Not because I was unbeatable. Because making a building impossible for an invisible person would also make it unbearable for everyone else. Doors, air, crowds, heat, noise, automation, maintenance, human habits. The world was too messy to seal perfectly. I had spent 20 years hiding inside that mess. It felt like the right ending to our rivalry, which is exactly why the universe refused to let it end. I still had almost 53 minutes left. I turned to leave the vault. The pudding cup moved. I stopped. Not because I touched it. I was 3 meters away. The cup slid 1 centimeter across the pedestal. I stared. Maybe vibration. Maybe the alarms. Maybe a tilted surface. Then the spoon lifted. The spoon rose into the air by itself. I was invisible. Nobody else was in the room. The spoon hovered above the pudding. Then it vanished. My entire brain shut down. Objects vanished when I held them. But I was not holding that spoon. I walked toward the pedestal, slowly. The spoon reappeared on the other side of the room and fell to the floor. Something had carried it there. Something invisible. I looked around an empty room while every alarm continued screaming. For the first time in my life, I understood how everyone else felt around me. It was horrible. I whispered hello. No answer. I moved left. Nothing. I moved right. Nothing. Then something tapped my shoulder. I launched myself forward so hard I nearly crossed the room in one step. The livestream audience saw nothing except alarms and a pudding cup. They had no idea 2 invisible people might be panicking at each other 3 meters from the dessert. I spun around. Still nothing. Then a laugh came from somewhere behind me. A young voice. Definitely not Kuroda. Definitely not Mina. The voice said my name. Hiro. I reached out. My hand touched empty air. Then something grabbed General Quack's bow tie in my jacket pocket. I felt the tug. I grabbed my pocket. Too late. General Quack vanished from my possession. That had never happened before. An object I was carrying had been taken by another invisible person, and instead of becoming visible, it remained gone. Whoever touched it had a power like mine. Maybe exactly mine. The vault door opened. Kuroda entered with Mina behind him. I stayed invisible. The other presents did too. Kuroda looked at the empty pudding room and asked why I had not left. I did not know how to answer without revealing my voice to a live stream microphone. Then General Quack appeared on Kuroda's shoulder. The plastic duck sat there perfectly balanced with its red bow tie facing forward. Kuroda went completely still. Mina's mouth fell open. I did not do that. Kuroda slowly reached for the duck. It vanished again before he touched it. The alarms changed tone. Not because of me. A second moving anomaly had appeared on the environmental map. Kuroda looked at the control display. One invisible human-shaped disturbance stood near the pedestal. That was me. Another moved toward the far wall. My stomach dropped. The second anomaly was real. Then it passed through a locked door. Not opened it. Passed through it. The door did not move. The sensor showed a body-shaped absence on one side, then the other. I had spent 20 years learning one absolute rule. Invisibility did not make me intangible. Apparently nobody told the new person. I ran after them. The door was locked. Of course it was. I slammed my palm against it. Kuroda saw the handle shake by itself. He understood immediately and unlocked it. I rushed into the corridor. Empty. Environmental sensors showed the second anomaly moving fast toward the west wing. I followed. For once, every security system Kuroda had built became useful to me. Thermal cameras flashed vague cold spots. Pressure tiles triggered with invisible footsteps. Air ribbons moved. Doors remained closed as the unknown person passed straight through them. They were not sneaking. They were running. I chased them through 3 rooms, down a stairwell, across the old food court, and into the bubble corridor. Bubbles filled the air. My body created a visible outline. Then another human-shaped outline appeared 20 meters ahead. Smaller than me. Faster. The bubble silhouette turned. For 1 second, it looked directly at me even though neither of us had visible faces. Then it waved. It waved at me. I was furious. I ran harder. The second figure reached a wall. No door. No opening. It passed through. Gone. I hit the wall at full speed. I did not pass through. 20 years of experience did not protect my forehead. I bounced backward and landed in bubbles. Somewhere beyond the wall. The invisible stranger laughed again. Then the sensors lost them. Completely. No heat. No pressure. No airflow change. Nothing. I sat on the floor invisible, covered in bubbles, holding my forehead. Kuroda and Mina arrived a minute later. I reappeared. Not accidentally. Not behind a wall. Right there in front of both of them. Kuroda finally saw the missing man after 20 years. He looked at me. Then at the wall. Then at the bubbles. He did not seem surprised by my face. That irritated me more than it should have. Mina asked where General Quack was. I pointed at the wall. That answer made no sense. Then Kuroda's phone chimed. A security camera outside the building had recorded something. We watched the clip. The west exterior wall stood empty. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then General Quack appeared in midair. The duck dropped onto the pavement. A handwritten paper note appeared beside it. No person. No door opening. No visible hand. Just the duck and note materializing from nothing. Security staff recovered them. Kuroda brought the note upstairs. It contained only 6 words. You took long enough, Hiro. I read it twice. Mina read it 3 times. Kuroda immediately asked whether I had ever met another person with a similar ability. No. Whether I had ever passed through walls. No. Whether objects had ever remained invisible after leaving my possession. No. Whether my power had ever changed suddenly. Also no. Then Mina noticed something on the back of the paper. A date. Tomorrow's date. Beneath it was a sunrise time. 5:31 a.m. And beneath that, an address. Not a secret laboratory. Not an abandoned warehouse. Not a mountain temple. A 24-hour family restaurant. I stared at the address. Kuroda stared at the address. Mina searched it on her phone. The restaurant was famous for unlimited breakfast pancakes. Of course it was. Of course the first other invisible person in existence wanted to meet over pancakes. I looked at General Quack. The bow tie was missing again. In its place, somebody had tied a tiny blue ribbon around his neck. My power timer still had 41 minutes left. Tomorrow morning, it would gain another second. 1 second did not feel small anymore. Not after 20 years. Not after 2 hours. Not after discovering someone else who could disappear, walk through walls, steal my duck, evade Kuroda's entire sensor network, and apparently knew my breakfast preferences. Mina started making a list of questions. Kuroda started designing a portable sensor package. I started wondering whether the stranger's power also grew every morning. Then I wondered how long they had been gaining seconds. Then I wondered what would happen if they had started before me. 5 years before me would mean more time. 10 years would mean a lot more. 20 years would mean hours beyond mine. And if they could pass through walls, invisibility might not even be their only ability. I suddenly remembered the thousands of missing man incidents Kuroda had logged that I never caused. The synchronized toilets, the umbrellas, the impossible elevator readings, the sightings in cities I had never visited. For years, I had laughed at them as false reports. Maybe some were. Maybe not all. I checked the note again. 5:31 a.m. Sunrise. The stranger had chosen the exact moment my limit would increase. That meant they knew the rule. Not just my identity. The rule. Every morning. 1 more second. I had never published that. Mina had never published it. Kuroda had only estimated it. Someone else knew exactly how my power worked. I should have been worried. I was. But I was also curious. And hungry. Mostly curious. Probably 60% curious, 40% pancakes. Kuroda asked whether I planned to go. I looked at him. Then at Mina. Then at General Quack wearing the mysterious blue ribbon. After 20 years of making bad decisions around impossible situations, I had become very good at recognizing one more. So naturally, before the sun even rose the next morning, I was already sitting in the family restaurant beside the pancake buffet, watching the clock approach 5:31 while an empty chair across from me slowly pulled itself away from the table.